What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 235. My name is Steve, and who else is here with me today?
I'm John.
Ron.
John Ron. It's John Ron.
John Ron.
So for the rest of the podcast, John Ron will talk just slightly over top of one another for everything that they have to say. So they are presenting that united front, as we all have come to know and love. That is John Ron.
Yes.
But yeah, man, good to talk to you guys. It's been a little bit, man. We've been off the schedule for a little bit here, just busy with everything that's coming up in life and work and all that good stuff. But it's I'm glad we could get together for a little catch-up episode, talk about a couple topics that we've been chatting about a little bit on our little thread that we have ongoing outside of the podcast, but that we kind of use as a nice little marker of things that we definitely want to bring onto the show and talk about to see what our listeners think about it, and also just to talk with one another and kind of get a little deeper into these topics. So hopefully we can spend some time talking about a couple different things tonight.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
A lot's been going on while we were away.
Yeah, yeah. The world does not stop. Surprise to say. When we take some time off, the news cycle that is Hollywood and television and music and whatnot, the entertainment industry as a whole, it does not stop, which is surprising to me, but it just seems to be the way it goes.
We have a lot to tackle. That's the cool part about waiting a little bit. We have some perspective and some things to talk about.
I've needed the distraction. I've needed to vent about these pop cultural things. And yet in my life right now, there's the utter chaos of this basement remodel that we started last November.
Oh, my God.
That has spiraled now. We're like in our 5th month, and there's like a contractor who is either having major issues or he's fleecing us, and we're not sure which one it is.
Oh, no.
And I was realizing recently that I need to stop being so much like Tom Hanks in The Money Pit and start being more like Tom Hanks in The Road to Perdition.
There you go.
All right.
Even though we haven't had a tub break through the floor yet, but it's been...
Yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, luckily there's no tub involved in this remodel, but the way this contractor's been working, I'm sure he'll find some way to wreck the upstairs.
He'll find that tub. Believe that. He'll find it.
And it will fall through that ceiling.
Well, it's a long and sordid tale, but it's just I want to let people know, if you think you're getting a good deal on a contractor, go with someone who's asking for more. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a life lesson right there.
Right.
Distract me, please. Distract me.
What's our jump off tonight, you guys?
Game of Thrones, right? I think one of the things that's coming to an end in this year of heartbreaking endings is Game of Thrones. And at this point, we should be about 2 episodes in, right?
Yeah.
Right. We've all seen the first 2 episodes of the 8th and final season of Game of Thrones, which you're right, Ronald. It's one of the 3 biggies that is coming to an end. The Avengers, as we know it, is coming to an end. I don't expect they're going to stop making Avengers movies, and many of those characters will still be around, but it's still being sold as the culmination of something. And then we have Star Wars Episode 9 coming way later in the year, which is supposed to be the end of the main story we've been seeing, and they don't really have any other movies on the schedule right now, so that feels significant. And I have heard several people say this could be the weekend that both Jon Snow and Captain America die, because we have Endgame coming out, but we also have the Battle of Winterfell happening on the next Game of Thrones, and these first 2 episodes of the season have been setting up that giant battle. It's the first supersized episode of the season. Remember when they were talking about how most of the episodes were going to be movie length, or at least close to like 80 minutes? Yeah. This is the first one that's going to be giant, and these first 2 episodes, I've loved them. I've loved all the character moments, but a lot of people, I think, have been waiting for there to be battles. I've always found Game of Thrones more interesting when it's these long conversations between people where all this history is coming into it, and the first 2 episodes thus far have been packed with it, especially the most recent one. The second was just incredible. Oh, yeah. But I've been pretty happy with the season thus far, and I've been in and out of love with the show as a fan of the books, who sometimes thought the books did things better. I always come down on the side of the spectacle of the show is so great that it doesn't matter if it's strictly adhering to any books, but now they're way off the books and they're bringing it to an end, and you can kind of feel where it's going, can't you? It's starting to hurt.
Oh yeah, chaos is coming. The battle is coming. What the hell is going to happen as the dead come towards all of the living? That's the question. Who is going to die?
As the living die and then can be reanimated as the living dead, you know.
Oh, God.
That's the whole thing about the Night King. His army grows as he defeats people. So
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the episodes have been great this season so far. I agree. Like, I've loved both of the first 2 episodes. And I mean, you know, I think that the gem that this show is, and like why it has the following it has, is because it does a really good job of balancing, like, basically what John was just talking about, like, where, you know, you get these great character moments and character development and history kind of catching up to characters and things like that. But it does that really, really well, and it does the spectacle just as good, if not better, in some cases. So I mean, a show that can do both, and, you know, have it peppered throughout a season, even if it is a shortened one, kind of carried up in the back by feature-length episodes, like 80 minutes or so, like John was saying. But yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like it's coming to an end. I think it's interesting that, you know, that the Battle of Winterfell is like the 3rd episode of the season. So I mean, as epic and just like dire as this feels, and, you know, people are it's gonna be the last time we see them on this show probably. There's a lot there's a lot left in the season, you know, like the first 2 episodes were 50 minutes and change, and, like, you know, the last 4 are over an hour and 20 minutes each, pretty much. So I think it's really interesting that, you know, that big epic spectacle is happening in the 3rd of 6 episodes. So you still have nearly 4 hours of story left to tell, and to see what characters make it through this, and where that takes the story, and ultimately who ends up on the Iron Throne. I mean, I think they're just doing an amazing job, and just playing enough into the fan service, enough into the, you know, the spectacle, the characters that you love. And I mean, it's crazy that, you know, Brienne, you know, this episode this past weekend, you know, the knighting by Jaime of Sir Brienne, it was like just a great scene. I mean, just like to see all those characters in a room and experience. And for them to all experience something that kind of great together, and for a character that, like, virtually everybody that watches the show loves in Brienne, was just an amazing scene. And, you know, kind of gave you goosebumps a little bit, or at least me, and even made me choke up a little bit. I mean, that's just a
little bit. What's wrong with you?
I mean, like, you know, I didn't want to say it out straight out, but I mean, like, Aaron and I were straight up bawling.
Well, that relationship might be my favorite one on the show. The one between Jaime and Brienne.
It's grown into that. You're right.
And, like, Jaime, the way that he went from being this guy who was kind of like an evil Ken doll in the beginning, right, and he turned into this nuanced character because he was brought low. I mean, he used to be one of the greatest fighters, and now he's not even close.
Right.
And he's just got his dignity, I guess, and his nobility, and he's tried to use that for the right things ever since he's had kind of this series of humbling experiences. And Brienne was such a huge part of that sort of suggestion of redemption for him, that it's great to see him at this point in the show being able to do the nicest possible thing for her, because she so clearly deserves that moment, and we've been kind of wanting to see that moment. And I love who was assembled to see that moment. That scene, that fireside scene, who was there, how they came into the room, what they said, everything about that was like what I love about this show. And it's this feeling of camaraderie before the ultimate inevitable pain and doom, and you totally feel it. How do you feel, Ronald? Are you starting to get worried for some of your favorite characters on that show, or do you think there are certain people that are you know, fireproof, so to speak?
I mean, everything from the new intro on Game of Thrones for the season, just kind of telling you that things are going to be totally different. It's super. I don't know. It is the culmination of all of these characters kind of coming together. People that you just don't think would. I guess the part that I've been thinking about the most is Jaime's redemption, obviously, but also Jaime facing some of the people that he hasn't seen in a really long time, and seeing the regret in his eyes, and even a scene that almost mirrored the Littlefinger scene, and Jaime being put under the same sort of questioning, and him not receiving the same fate. You know, I think they're doing things like that to kind of let you know that surely anybody can die in the show. You know, you just never know. But there's room for redemption for some characters as well. So I think I'm a little afraid to see what's going to happen. Seeing people make up, and that's all going to be ruined as the dead come and murder everybody. But
Yeah, I felt the same thing, Ronald. I was like, man, it's great to see these characters finally saying, I sort of understand where you were coming from, or I kind of forgive you, or even if not saying that, but implying that. But then I was like, yeah, but a lot of this is not going to matter because tomorrow these people are going to be burning zombie versions of each other.
Right. So is Daenerys gonna go crazy? Is she gonna murder some people? What is she gonna do to retain? I'm a little worried about her, man. Her character arc in this season, her changes, she seems a little colder. And I think to maintain what she wants to maintain and win everything she wants to win, I think she'll do anything, man.
Well, there's this one Emilia Clarke quote that I don't think this counts as a spoiler, but it is something she said in the media in an interview. They asked her how she felt about the ending, and she said that she was shaken up to think that will be people's last image of Daenerys.
Holy.
That she's like she's shaken up to think that this is how people will think of her character when this story is over. So I think her kind of being a repeat of her dad, the Mad King, and it would be really interesting if Jaime is in a position to possibly kill her, but I don't think they'll do anything that neat and tidy. But I do picture her at the end maybe being on the Iron Throne, but we will feel, wow, this was not worth it. She's evil, or that she's, she could kill Jon, she could kill Tyrion, she could kill there's so many people that she could, like, in the end turn around and do away with because they threaten her hold on the throne. Like, Jon may have chosen the worst possible timing to share that news.
Yes. Oh, poor Jon. Poor Jon.
So did he just Ned Stark himself? Is this the same kind of moment where he came to Cersei and sort of tipped his hand that he was coming for them? Is that Jon's final failure, or would that too be a little bit too neat and tidy if he just echoed Ned? Is he gonna play it differently? And is Daenerys gonna actually have a softer side? I mean, I wonder, would she go so far as to have an opportunity to save Jon and not use it in the middle of this battle that's coming up? Do you think he survives this battle?
I mean, I think that's the reason why he said it when he said it. I mean, I think, yeah, maybe it's the most inopportune time, but I mean, without knowing who's going to survive it, if Sam and Bran are the only ones that really know and that he's told, if everybody dies and that history could die, or that information could die. And if he thinks that she has any chance of surviving equal to or greater than him, I mean, he's just telling, I don't know. I'm curious what she does with the information. I too thought it'd be interesting if there was an opportunity to save him and she didn't, and even if he survives it, that would be like the fracture point that actually causes a conflict and the rest of this season, like I was talking about earlier. Because you still have Cersei down in King's Landing that you're not even really thinking about right now.
And she thinks she's going to wait it out and fight whoever wins. Yeah. But she doesn't realize that if the Night King wins, then he's got an even bigger army of really tough, fast-moving zombies. These aren't your Walking Dead zombies that you can poke with a screwdriver and they'll fall down.
These are World War Z zombies.
Or if the Night King's not even at Winterfell, even if he went straight for King's Landing.
Don't say that.
I mean, I'm just saying, you don't see him in that.
That's true, man.
Usually all those imposing shots at the end of episodes or seasons, he's kind of the one leading up his army before you go to black, and then he wasn't in that one, and
you're right.
Could be something crazy, but who knows? I all said and done, it's just it's super exciting. It's super sad in ways because it's it's ending, but it's got to end, and if they do it right, it'll just be like a historic thing. And I mean, the way this show's pacing, it's definitely one of my favorite shows of all time. And it'll be exciting if they really figure out how to make it stick in the end. And it's also just an interesting topic only because it really kind of feels like the end of not only a show on one of the biggest and most prominent cable networks out there, but possibly the end of an era of television programming, just because of the way people are watching shows now. This is the last great show that I feel like people are literally coming around a television or a platform or streaming on a weekly basis to watch something that has that water cooler social media impact that this show has. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in its absence, and how HBO specifically, adapts and what they have coming up looks pretty interesting. But whether anything is on the level of this film, of this series, even any spin-offs that they do for Game of Thrones series, I don't know that it would ever match it. And
well, I think that's an interesting question because of the notion that there are, and actually this would be a great segue into our next topic, which is going to be some of these streaming services. But
that was intentional,
John. I know that's brilliant, but I have something else Game of Thrones oriented I want to ask you guys. Are there particular characters that you are, I guess you could look at it one way or the other. You could say that you think are doomed and it makes you sad, or that you would like to see make it to the end. Who are you the most worried about?
I love Jon Snow.
Tyrion for me.
Yeah, Tyrion would be on a list. I really like him. I like Jaime, but I feel like Jaime's doomed.
He is, man.
I do look forward to hopefully him surviving this battle and hopefully being able to fulfill the prophecy that Cersei had gotten from that like witch when they were younger, like about her younger brother like killing her or something. That I'm talking about like Maggie the Frog, like that prophecy.
Yeah, the Valonqar prophecy.
Yeah, the Valonqar. Yeah,
I think it's supposed to be the little brother.
Yeah,
and Jaime was technically born after her, and so therefore he could be the little brother. But she always thought it was Tyrion that would be the person that would kill her. That's been predicted, but certain things that have been predicted for years, like Jon Snow being a secret Targaryen, those things turned out to be true. So certain things I don't think they're going to sidestep just because it might be predictable or it might be obvious. But I think what isn't predictable is how they're going to get to that moment. I might think that Daenerys in the end is going to be like the Mad Queen, so to speak. But I don't know how they're going to get to that moment, and I don't know who's left by her side. But when you said Tyrion, Ronald, that struck a chord with me. I'm very worried about him. Why do you think you're worried about him? I feel like it's in the air, but what is it that makes you worry about Tyrion?
I think with some of his shortcomings in terms of kind of being ahead of his sister, and I think that Daenerys really, despite being talked out of kicking him off or killing him or whatever she planned on doing with him, still is going to be a sore spot for her as this battle goes on, and I don't think she forgets it. And it also seems like he also is a Lannister, and Lannisters can't be trusted to a lot of people. He walks around and people are spitting on the ground and shit like that. Sure, it has to do with Jaime also, but I think there's some raw feelings that people have about the Lannisters, and I think when chaos happens, maybe somebody will kind of come out of the woodworks and maybe stab them while the chaos is going on. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a night walker or something like that that's going to kill him. I think it's going to be somebody in the midst of the chaos that's just going to be like, you were terrible to me in the past, your family was terrible to me, Gah! Right in the back.
You mentioned his shortcomings, and I feel like that has been something they have... you kind of alluded to, at least, his flaws of character that would be... They've been foregrounded in the scenes where he's talking to Daenerys and she's calling him out for not being a great advisor in many ways. And it has been a while since they've given him like a real genius stroke. Yeah. So I don't know. There's something about Tyrion that feels like he's on a dark path, and I just think that would be the ultimate Game of Thrones play. You kill Ned Stark in season 1, you kill Robb Stark and Catelyn Stark in season 3 or season 4, whenever they did the Red Wedding. And then it seems like killing Tyrion or having him end up inadvertently screwing up. That feels very Game of Thrones. Yeah. But we all think Jaime's doomed. I kind of do.
Possibly.
It feels that way. Especially like that episode was a lot of Jaime.
It was a lot of goodbyes for him, if you want to.
Yeah, it was like a lot of, heart to heart with Tyrion and with Brienne, and just, in front of that council, even just like being forgiven or, allowed to stay is like a bit of redemption on a macro level. But yeah, I don't know. Just there's a lot going on in that episode that I don't know necessarily it's going to be in the next episode, but I think Jaime's kind of got something coming.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Do you think people are wrong to assume that Cersei dies?
I think people are wrong to assume it. I think the common thought that we have is like, bad guys get what they deserve, and that's not always true. As we're seeing currently in politics, some villains live to be
topical.
Some villains live to be 90, 100 years old, man. So like I think that the thought that somebody's going to get their comeuppance is a cool idea, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen.
Well, yes, I have a feeling we'll be catching up. I think maybe after we've seen Endgame and we've seen the Battle of Winterfell episode this upcoming weekend, I think we might want to catch up after that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll get to finally settle our ice cream wager that we made about Infinity War and Endgame, about at the end of that, how many characters will be dead. I still am holding fast that perhaps 2 of them will die, even though, and here's my segue seat, Steve, to kind of make up for the one of yours that I ruined. There's a lot of characters from this movie who are getting a series on Disney Plus that have been announced, and it makes you wonder if Hawkeye's getting a series, and if Wanda and the Vision are getting a series, and if who else? Falcon and Bucky are getting a series together.
Oh, yes.
It makes you wonder where in the timeline those series fall, and if so, because they are using the actors from the movies, does that mean those characters definitely come back and all survive? And if so, who can actually die in Endgame? I'm beginning to wonder, Ronald, if I will be the one buying the ice cream. How do you feel?
You may be. Well, here's the thing. I don't know what service these things could be seen on. What service can these be seen on?
This is all Disney Plus.
What? What's that, Steve?
There's a magical new world coming to your streaming set.
Get the hell out of here.
With a very, very creative name. It's not just called Disney. It's called Disney Plus.
Ha
Coming to your set-top box this fall.
$7 a month.
It's crazy.
Not bad.
It's crazy, man.
Not bad for what they're going to have on there, frankly, and all the stuff that they own now, including the entire run of The Simpsons. That's like an example of the sort of stuff that you don't even think of as a Disney product.
Yeah.
That is owned by Disney. But yeah, all those series, and then of course there's the extension of the Star Wars franchise that in between movies, they won't be making movies, but they've announced at least 2 different shows for the foreseeable future. I think they've said they're going to take a hiatus from making Star Wars movies. But the Marvel thing is a really strange thing because it does make you think, okay, and also Black Widow's got a movie, Black Panther 2 is going to be a movie, Doctor Strange 2 is going to be a movie. It really only leaves a very small group of A-list actors on that list that that might get killed in that. But anyway, yeah, Disney Plus. Do you guys think you're gonna just sign right up because it seems like too good of a deal?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I'm not thinking twice about it.
No.
I'm probably gonna pay for it for a year just to have it.
Me too.
Yeah. Now, one thing that. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
I was gonna just what you just said. There's no question. I mean, even beyond the Star Wars and Marvel stuff, and even the Simpsons and Fox related things that may not come to mind immediately. I mean, just as a dollar value, just getting access to the Disney vaults and all of the animated films and eventually the Pixar film, even just that stuff for $6.99 a month is just is beyond worth it. I mean, that's cream of the crop content. That's not just random TV series and random movies like Netflix started out with. And I'm the biggest Netflix fan out there. But I mean, Disney is not, it's not apples to apples. This is a juggernaut in terms of their content library. So so to be able to, like Ronald said, pay I think it was $79 a year or $80 a year to be able to get it or something like that. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And they've announced that the vaulted movies, the ones that we don't get access to on a regular basis, are gonna be on there.
Yeah.
And then for the video files, a lot of the content that hasn't been available in 4K on anything but Vudu is gonna be in 4K on this service, which is nuts.
Right.
It's there's real incentives of getting it. And if you're a Disney Channel fan, all of the Disney Channel stuff from the past is going to be on there, which is really cool.
It's crazy, man.
Something I heard recently that I was a little interested to hear, just because it does seem to fly in the face of maybe what we were saying about this era of television and kind of how appointment television is going away. But the Mandalorian, the first Star Wars series that they're premiering in November, in advance of the new Star Wars movie, is going to come out week to week. It's not going to be a binge model release.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, maybe they're going to return to that. Maybe they're going to try to get you back into that mode of when it comes out. They're going to. I mean, I don't know if they can report numbers like HBO can. Netflix has never really had to report numbers. They've bragged a few times, but we don't really know what constitutes a hit for them. We know that things can be canceled if there's not enough people watching it. But yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting. It feels like, oh, that's a little bit of a throwback, even though it's ultimately it's part of this very futuristic mono organization that's taking over our culture, which is Disney. But it feels a little bit nostalgic to say we're going to get you to come back next week to find out what happens next. That's which again I think works for shows like Game of Thrones, or for me, Better Call Saul, shows that draw the story out, and over weeks you get into it more because you're waiting more. It becomes more special that way. But I would also gladly binge all of those shows that I just mentioned. So yeah, we sound like we're sold on that. Is there anything about it? Like, is it just the general giantness of Disney that is the sort of the ugly underbelly of this thing? Is that as great as it is and as fun as the content is going to be? It's kind of crazy that they have all that stuff.
I think the only downside for me is if you're a nostalgia person that wants past Disney stuff, it's amazing. But the announcements they made about original content versus what's happening on day one is very different than each other. So The Mandalorian is the only original series that's going to be in the Star Wars or Marvel world. And there's a show called The World According to Jeff Goldblum that's going to be on there. Those are the two only original things that will premiere when Disney Plus starts. So that's something to know.
Yeah, most of that stuff that was announced is for 2020 or beyond.
Yeah, so it's good to know that you're kind of getting into it, you're buying into the nostalgia of this right now and The Mandalorian. So anything else that you're expecting, you're gonna have to wait a while before it comes out. So that's the only downside to me.
I know what you're saying, Ronald. I didn't know if there was other stuff coming out, and hearing all these announcements about shows and projects that are coming out reminded me of the Apple streaming service, which has done nothing but announce amazing creative teams and projects, but no content yet. And I don't know, when is that stuff supposed to start hitting? And do we know anything about that service? Is it still just a suggestion on the horizon? With
nobody said anything. What'd you think about people just talking about shows? What'd you think about that during the announcement?
You mean just people talk, like we can all talk about shows? We can all just start right now. Hey, Ronald, I got a show coming.
Steve, what'd you think?
I mean, I'm mixed on it. I mean, they got to talk about something. I mean, it's a keynote. So I mean, I think what they have going is going to be pretty impressive once it actually comes out. I forget what they said their launch was, but I mean, they're doing some pretty big collaborations with big names, and I mean, some of the shows that they have. I forget which ones are coming out first, but I mean, there's like 4 or 5 of them after they announced or played that demo reel that were confirmed to basically be done, like to be in post-production. So like, there's at least like I think 3 or 4 or 5 that are kind of ready to come out. That one, is it like the Emily Dickinson one? Like they had like Haley Steinfeld's in.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the ones that they were saying is going to be one of the day one. What do you call it? One of the day one releases. It's just called Dickinson. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing. They got to just get the word up, get everybody pumped up, and it'll roll out. I mean, I think they'll come out with enough when it starts to kind of intrigue people, but then they got to kind of be consistent and kind of keep it coming. And I think that's the other thing. And some of that's probably completely intentional. Like, they've been talking a big game, but I think part of it also is that they're trying to like schedule this stuff so that it can roll out probably over a full financial year and, drive enough subscription to it so that it's growing year over year, not just people jumping on from the start and like being able to watch everything. Oh, yeah. Because that's what keeps people subscribed. That's what people will be intrigued to subscribe for. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, that's all intentional in some ways. But I mean, they have some pretty cool stuff. Like, they got like the M. Night thriller that's coming out on there, the Emily Dickinson thing. There's they're relaunching Amazing Stories with Steven Spielberg. There's I don't know, they got Bill Murray has a movies, Brie Larson has a series I think coming out on there. I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff, man. It's really impressive, like John said, like the names and like the profile that they have built. But I'm just, it will be interesting to see how it gets programmed when it launches, and what there will be in addition to those things, or if that's going to be the vast majority of what's on there.
Yeah, I'm super curious, man.
Yeah,
I think a long time ago, Ronald, you were complaining about the sort of early news cycle, like just how early information starts trickling out about projects,
Yeah,
and how every
it's a
little thing has
disgusting,
its
man.
positioned to be a story and to get clicks. And I like being informed, but it's weird how many things we hear about that are really just on the distant horizon now because they have to start casting and they have to start filming. And supposedly, with just the Mandalorian, the Star Wars show that's coming out on Disney Plus in November. The fact that the creative team they assembled for that sounds so interesting, and that they supposedly are throwing movie quality production value into this series, and I think they've said they'll do that with the other kind of movie spin-off shows that they're doing. It kind of blurs the line maybe a little bit more than the Netflix Marvel stuff did,
Right,
or that idea of an extension of a franchise, the fact that it's under the Disney roof, it seems very much like Disney to be like, well, now that we're doing it ourselves, we're gonna really amp it up. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it tips off who survives, or I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? The Endgame sense of the kind of the Game of Thrones question of who do you think is doomed, who do you think is just has to live?
I hope it doesn't indicate anything. I don't really want it to, but it kind of does in a way. It kind of does in a way, at least the people that'll come back or something.
Right.
Yeah, it just seems like we have some things in place, and maybe that's to also confuse us, because it could be a prequel for some of the characters. So.
Yeah, there's little pockets of time they could say this takes place in, or it could be a splinter dimension where things are different, or so. We don't know what the heck they're doing in this new movie. I have heard that there's some kind of time travel involved in some kind of doubling back, but I haven't gotten much of a sense of what the story is. What have you guys thought of the marketing for Endgame? Have you thought it was pretty good, or do you think it's a little too mysterious? It doesn't reveal much.
I love it. I love it.
Me too.
No, I mean, I don't know this, but I mean, I just can't help but feel like they're not showing us any of the movie, and I hope that's the right read, because something about a lot of the shots in the trailer feel like it's the beginning of the film, like where they're really showing us zero things pretty much, which would be great because the trailers that they put out have been great and like completely amazing trailers and teasers, and just like just gets everybody pumped up for it even more than they already were, if that's possible. But to be able to accomplish that just purely on if it was like the first 20 or 30 minutes of the movie, and then you get in there and like, wow, like that was just the first half hour of the film, like that would be amazing, and that'd be a great experience to completely have no idea what's happening in the movie going into it. And I hope that's the case.
Now that word has come out about the movie, I've heard that the trailers do have a few shots from later in the movie, but they're not shots that are very, you don't have any context for what's going on in them. It's just like an action shot of somebody jumping or whatever. And so it's like, it does reveal a location or a hallway or something, but it doesn't really reveal, like you can't tell what the story is from those trailers. But they said that most of the shots are actually from that opening stretch of the movie where it really does seem like a lot happens.
Yeah, really, it does.
But I mean, I have no idea what this movie is. It's similar to the way I feel about much of the Game of Thrones final season. And actually the way I feel about Star Wars Episode 9, now that we've seen a trailer for that, The Rise of Skywalker, which I thought that trailer was great, and looks like a great movie. So to me, it's like, I don't know what any of these things are going to be. I really don't. I mean, I kind of can predict certain things in Game of Thrones, and I can kind of picture where the in-game thing might be going with a few characters, but I have no real concept of what the story or the plan or the complications or anything is going to be. I just have a general sense that some of those big names whose contracts have supposedly reached their end, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go, but I don't know what that means. Do you have any sense of it, or have you heard anything that makes you feel like you can guess what the story is?
No, I've purposefully been staying away from this stuff for any of the movies. But I'll say this, man. You know how I felt about the last movie. I don't know if I've ever seen marketing done this well for a movie ever. In terms of just giving us enough to see brooding characters, some scenes where people are just sad in a place, and me feel compelled to see it quite as much as I want to see Endgame. I think what it really boils down to is I think Infinity War did incredibly well, but it also may have taught them some things about how to present information. So they're presenting us with the bare minimum and doing it in ways that are so creative. Voiceovers, just kind of recounting things that happened in the first one.
Yeah.
And I think that it's this mastery of storytelling in this last bit that I just didn't see before in the previous movie that I'm seeing in this one. That's making me super excited.
Yeah, that's.
So I was not this excited before, man. I'm fucking losing it for this one.
I'm pumped, man. Like to the point, and I kind of have been trying to do what you just said, which is like, I find it hard to not read stuff. Like I've kind of watched, like I've kind of like just like looked to see like a general consensus of some of the early reactions, but nothing. I haven't read any reviews to the point that I even uninstalled Twitter and Facebook from my phone because I'm like that nervous about accidentally scrolling over something that I don't want to see, even if it's like an emoji or like a picture of someone. You know, I don't even want to risk it because this literally, I don't know the last time that I was this excited, honestly, to go see a movie like with a packed house on opening night. Like we're recording this on Wednesday night, and I'm going to the 7:00 show tomorrow night, and on one of the Dolby screens, and I'm so excited. Like Aaron and I are going. We got a babysitter. Like we are pumped, and. You know, it's going to be like, I kind of felt like that going to see Force Awakens when it came back out, a few years back, and like getting it with that crowd and like that line around the theater and just like every show sold out and people lined up just so excited. And I mean, it's a rare thing now at the theaters, like they're fighting a battle to keep people coming to the theaters. And this is like the unicorn that comes up, and it's just like you will have one of the most interesting and probably memorable experiences if you go see this movie on opening weekend and you're seeing it with a crowd as excited to see it as you are. So I'm really, really excited.
Now, Ronald, I remember one of your criticisms of Infinity War was that you thought that it was not set up for people that hadn't seen all the movies.
Right.
And I wanted to kind of, I've always forgotten to mention it, but I've always wondered what it is. I felt like that movie had the right to be the sort of culmination for the people that had seen all the movies. My point was that I think Endgame is even more so, that it has earned the right to just hit the ground running and not explain anything to people that might be new to these movies. And I was wondering, do you feel more open to that with this movie, that this movie really is for people that like these movies and not for the average person bumbling in? I mean, it should still work as a story for someone who's just watching this, mean, but what do you think?
I think even just through the circumstances, I think they'll explain more than was explained in the last one. I think just by default, because there's going to be a situation where they're going to be like, oh, these people have disappeared. What are we to do? I mean, in better dialogue, obviously, right?
No, I don't want it to be better than
that. Let's hope.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, by default, there's going to be more dialogue about the past movie. And all I wanted was like, hey, how did we get here? Just briefly, so that people who maybe missed Civil War or something,
you mean
just had
people
a little
who didn't watch
idea.
all 19 movies before that?
Right. That's all I wanted. It's just the movie fan in me supersedes the Marvel fan in me that just wanted some explanation for someone that just plopped into the movie. That's all.
A little bit more of a self-contained film that this would stand alone, rather than something that really is like for fan folk.
Right. And I think you can do both. And I think that this one, again, just because of the circumstances, is going to do both, because it has to a little bit, because it has to say, like, they have to kind of explain how it happened, how everybody kind of puffed into a pile of dust. And, they kind of have to explain that a little to each other, because it's a little weird that it happened, So it has a little more going for it by default. So, yeah, I'm hoping that it's both a self-contained movie and fan service. And I think that that's possible. And I think it will be.
Yeah, I have
3 hours. I think it's going to be.
A lot of people think that seems way too long, but I'm sort of like, I kind of want them to. I want
it all.
I want to see whatever they've got. Yeah, I want to see whatever they've got.
Bring it all.
Does anybody have any thoughts or predictions you want to make, since this is our last chance to talk about it without having seen it? I guess we'll get together as soon as we've all seen it. We'll try to talk as soon as possible. But as far as thoughts now, do you have any general, like, this is going to happen, or you're worried? Like, yeah, who are you most worried about in this world?
I think that the glove is gonna be like Thor's hammer, and I only think that one person can pick it up, and I think that's Captain Marvel. Yeah, I think it's gonna be like Thor's hammer. I think they'll get it off of him, and then it'll be a situation where they can't get it up, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, the person that hasn't been here for 10 years can handle it," because that's why she's conveniently coming back.
I would love to see her play an important part, and it's cool the way they've set her up in the trailers for this. But and interestingly enough, they shot that stuff before they made her movie. So a lot of people have said she seems to be more made up and more kind of glam looking in this than she was in her movie, and that was because they had not yet decided on the look of the character for her own movie. But I think the writer-directors of that movie were on set for the Captain Marvel scenes in Endgame, so they got to have a voice in it, the same way James Gunn had a voice in the way the Guardians were portrayed in Infinity War. So I think they really do that a lot. So anyway, that's interesting that that happened, though, that they actually shot her part of this movie before she made her own film. That Brie Larson said that she kind of knew who the character was more at the end of shooting her own movie, and so it'll be interesting to see what that means for the way she's portrayed in this. But I don't know. I hope that she's not the ultimate savior just because I want it to be more interesting than one person. But I do think throwing her into the mix, and especially the kind of cockiness that she's showing and that Captain America is showing in the clip I've seen where they're talking about their plan, which is just like, we're going to go get it. And they're like, well, they've never met people like me before. You know, it's just, there's a cockiness to it. I feel like there's got to be something that fails and something that messes up early on. But I wonder how quickly we get back the characters from the last movie who are gone and it turns out to be a whole new story, or if they really hold that stuff to the very end. Is there anybody you think is just ultimately doomed, Steve?
I mean, it doesn't look good for, Captain America or Iron Man, like you were saying earlier. But, I mean, Captain America, you guys know, is my favorite character in the MCU. But, I mean, like, it's something that, if it happens, I'm sure it's going to be handled, like, amazingly. And it would work, and it would be on brand for the Steve Rogers of the MCU. And I don't know, that's been my kind of worry the whole time. And like every time I watch the trailers and whatever, it definitely feels like it. But I don't know, like anything could happen. And I don't know. I'm trying not to like go in with too much of a theory or too much of an expectation in terms of what the story's going to be. I just kind of want it to hit me and just like be with it in the moment. So I'm not really thinking too much about that.
Yeah, I've never been, whenever people do like death pools or like, guess which characters are going to die, name 15 characters on Game of Thrones that are going to die. It's always hard for me too, because I feel like part of what I like about these stories is that they surprise me. So I wouldn't really want, if I could predict something, I wouldn't really want it to go exactly that way.
So I have a Steve question related to Endgame. One is actually a comment. I think that you like Steve Rogers so much because your names are so similar, and you both have epic hair. That's why.
Yeah.
And then my question is, if Steve Rogers dies, will you weep?
I will do more than weep. I've explained to my wife already that there may be a side of me that I'm pretty emotional, so I cry a lot at movies and just in life in general at emotional moments. But that's being into movies and loving everything about what we talk about on this podcast. Like that's a character that I've just really come to love, and just for so many reasons, but I just think if it goes down, then it's going to be more than a weep. I'll probably be straight up just bawling. But it's funny enough, we're going with a big group of people like from my work and that are like really into the MCU, and I've like, we've had the conversation already, like, look, if whatever happens in the theater stays in the theater, this doesn't make its way back to the office. If you see me in a state that you have never seen me before. But yeah, I don't know. I have no doubt that it would be. But honestly, and all those people that we're going with, like they kind of all have said the same thing. Like if something happens to a character they love, like even in Infinity War, there were moments where like you felt something about to come that maybe didn't, or in some cases did. That but they've earned that stuff like that. I don't know. We talk all the time about the stakes and everything with this franchise or with these types of IP in general. But you know, in some ways, like delaying some of those things kind of makes the impact build in some ways, you know, arguably in some ways, where if it happens eventually, like in this kind of scenario, it could be even more impactful than it had it happened before. But yeah, I don't know, love that character, and you may be right with your analysis, Ronald, and but yes, if your assumption was that I would at least weep or more, you are correct in that as well.
Okay, gotcha. Cool.
Is there anybody that you'll like rip your clothes in the theater and scream if they die, Ronald, or are you just you're just open to whatever?
You know, Steve Rogers has grown on me a ton, man, and also Iron Man. There's something about Iron Man lately, the way that he's kind of softened up. He's become this kind of, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, wealthy, crotchety older man in this group. I kind of love who he's become, and I honestly would be really, really sad if either one of them die.
Yeah, I've always sort of assumed that it would be more Steve Rogers to die saving everybody or trying to, and it would be more Tony Stark to sort of survive and have to live with the guilt or the regret or whatever it would be. But I could see either one of those characters like switching up in that equation. I don't know what they think they've set up. I have a feeling they're going to try to double back and surprise us, but there's also something about just a satisfying arc. And, you know, some of these things are hard to keep as surprises. Certain actors say things about, it's going to be tough saying goodbye to this character or whatever, you know, and you just can tell that maybe that means they're at least done doing the movies, whether the character dies or not. So I just hope it's at least two, because I was really enjoying the idea of free ice cream.
Well, we'll see.
I'm just looking forward to the free ice cream in general, because I think I win either way.
Yeah, you do, you little bastard.
I took the right angle on this one.
Before we wrap the whole show up,
Yeah.
did you guys have any other streaming services that were not Disney oriented that you wanted to mention that are ones you're using or looking forward to?
Not actively using. Like I mean, obviously, like I said before, I use Netflix a ton, and I use HBO's over the top service, you know, the app. But I recently resubscribed to Hulu. Been trying to check that out a little more. But most of what I watch is, you know, on Netflix or HBO, but, and actually Amazon Prime has had a couple series recently that I've watched. Like they did that new Hannah series.
Oh yeah.
I'm only like a few episodes into it, but, I'm kind of digging it. I mean, it already got picked up for a second season, so apparently it's done well enough. But
yeah,
Is that Joel Kinnaman in that?
yeah, and I can never remember her name, or even Marielle Enos or whatever, the one who was in The Killing with him.
Yes.
She's in this as well. She's one of the main characters in Hannah also. Yeah, so I don't know. They got a couple good series coming up here. There's another one that I just added recently. Oh, I watched that whole series, The Giant Beast That Is the Global Economy, on Amazon Prime. It's the Adam McKay produced kind of docu-series with Cal Penn, where he's basically, it's kind of got that like Big Short, Vice type of filmmaking behind it, where they're kind of explaining really difficult topics about the global economy, but kind of in a manner that makes it a little more understandable or digestible to, like, you know, the layperson or somebody who doesn't really understand how that stuff works. But that's on Amazon Prime, and that was great. I love that, actually. That's we like went through that in a weekend, Aaron and I. But yeah, so I've kind of been trying to mix it up a little more and not just watch Netflix, but I feel like, you know, some of the other services are starting to drop some more content that has kind of lured me away a little bit. But what about you guys?
I'm heavy into Hulu lately, man.
Yeah.
They've been making some good content. I'm watching Rami, about the Muslim American guy from New York. It's so good, man. Think like Aziz Ansari's series, except with hipstery and way more. It covers way more stuff about his Muslim heritage. It's a really good show. So I'm using Hulu quite a bit. I'm also using this free service called Stir, STIRR. It's so think of the times where you're watching Netflix and you can't find anything, and you try to watch Hulu and you can't find anything, and you just want something random. Stir is one of those streaming services that has local news channels, but it also has like a stand-up channel, a horror film channel, a cartoon channel, anime channel.
Right.
And it's on all the streaming boxes, so like Apple TV, Roku, you name it, it's on there. Stir, STIRR. It's kind of the in-between sort of app that you can use,
cool.
and it comes in handy.
That's cool.
Especially if you're up like really late, you just like, I want to watch random stand-up. You'll turn something on, and it's a pretty good app.
I guess I'll have to check that out.
It's funny you mentioned that, like the randomness of not knowing what to watch, because I just read an article the other day that Netflix is apparently testing a feature that would do that. Like basically, like if you can't decide what to watch based off of the algorithm for you, based off of what you've rated or what you've watched or whatever, like it will do that. Like you would basically be able to hit this feature, this shake up. I forget what they said it was going to be called, but like this shake up feature.
Right, it's like a shuffle mode that like tries
yeah.
to predict your taste. Yeah, like a
And it just
recommended if you like.
And it just plays something that it thinks that you're going to like. Which seems like a no-brainer for as strong as their algorithm is. It seems pretty accurate. But I mean, like, I'd be curious when that gets rolled out. But they just recently started apparently testing that on select accounts. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. Well, is that it? I think that's it.
I think that's it.
We're in the end game now.
We talked about a bunch.
Yeah, I think literally this is the last. This is like a demarcation point in movie schmovie history. Is that?
Oh yeah.
This is the last time we'll be talking in a pre-Endgame world. And everything after that is just, we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be exciting to talk about it when we get back together. Mm-hmm. And also Game of Thrones, but that's got a couple more weeks left. All right, well, you can find the podcast at movieschmovie.com, Apple Podcast, Spotify, the Google Play Store, whichever platform you're on, you should be able to find us there. And if you can't, please let us know so we can figure out how to get there. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/movieschmovie. If you want to follow the page for updates, we also post the episodes there so you can stream them right from your Facebook feed and interact with all of us on that feed is probably the best way to do so. We're on there pretty much all the time in some way between the three of us. So when we post this, we'd love to get some comments, some feedback on what you guys are thinking about Game of Thrones so far before Sunday's next episode. And also, let's get to talking about Endgame once we all go out and see it this weekend, because we all will be, I hope. So
please join us in being the first podcast to talk about Endgame this week.
We're trying to be ahead of the curve here. It's a new thing for us. But yeah, so find us there, and let's talk and see what we think about this last. Well, not the last. This ending of this phase of the MCU. It'll be exciting to see where it goes from here, but it'll be fun to talk about it.
So is this the end of phase 2 of Movie Schmovie? If phase 1 was you guys before I came in, and then phase 2 ends now, right? This is the end of phase 2 of Movie Schmovie.
I guess we could say that. Yeah, might as well. Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything, so we could say it.
Yeah, we can say
anytime we want.
Yeah. I think you just said it, so there it is. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you guys for listening to Movie Schmovie, and hopefully we'll be back to chat with you sooner than later. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.
This would be episode number 235.
What was that?
I don't know what the fuck that was. It was like a pop-up. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Let's start over.